There is a place in central Ohio in the northeast part of Franklin County where three streams come together to form one. The Wyandot Native Americans called this place Gahanna, meaning three from one. The people have been living here for a long time before that. This is a map from 1914 that shows the location of Native American sites of the Hopewell, Adena, and Fort Ancient peoples. The triangles are burial mounds. The little square is an enclosure showing the location of a Wyandot Native American camp. In the upper left-hand corner, the circular enclosure is a large circular mound system near what is the village of Mifflinville. The prehistoric Native Americans were followed by the historic Native American tribes, the Shawnee, the Delaware, and the Wyandot in particular, who lived in this area for a long period of time. In the years after the American Revolution, large numbers of people began migrating from the eastern part of North America into this new area called the Ohio Country. This map from 1842 shows the location of land holdings in what is now Mifflin Township and Jefferson Township in Franklin County. In 1785, the land ordinance of that year set up a rectangular measuring system across the country, and that rectangular system is reflected in the land ownership that one sees in this part of the world. The original pioneers who came into this country in the wake of the American Revolution were a rather hardy breed, and they liked what they found. It was a forested area, punctuated by large prairies from place to place. But the thing that attracted people most was the topsoil, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet deep. This was a land extraordinarily rich in natural resources, game. It was an area that drew people very rapidly from the middle states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, so on. And these folks formed the original settlements in this part of the world in the wake of the American Revolution. There weren't all that many of these people, but they would be followed by others in relatively short order. In the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, large numbers of immigrants came to this country, predominantly from places like Ireland and Germany. There is an assumption that most of these people ended up in towns and villages along the way. That's not really true. A lot of the Germans and Irish settled in the countryside as well, and became farmers and other settlers. And so we found that by the time we get down to the 1830s or the 1840s, that a large number of people are living in this northeast part of Franklin County. However, there are not very many towns or villages at this point. In 1838, a number of people came together and formed the Therein Lutheran Church, that translates to be the Peace Lutheran Church. There was a German congregation as well as an English-speaking congregation, and sermons alternated in each of those languages from time to time. By 1849, John Clark had decided that the time had come, perhaps, to form a town. His father Joseph had bought 800 acres in 1814 from Governor Thomas Worthington. John improved those acres over the years, and the area came to be called the Gahanna Plantations. By 1849, John Clark had decided that the time had come to build a town. So he laid out a town at 3 smaller streams on the north end of the Gahanna Plantations, and he called his new town Gahanna. And perhaps all of them would have been well if that's all that happened. But in the meantime, this man, Jesse Bauman, former county commissioner, liked the area as well and decided he would put in a town. So he put one in immediately north of John Clark's town, laid out a village that he called Bridgeport. The two towns competed with each other for land sales for a series of years, but by 1869, in the wake of the American Civil War, a petition was made for the establishment of a post office. The name sought by most local residents, Bridgeport, had already been taken as the name of the town, so the post office said you'd have to find another name. The name that was settled on was Gahanna. As we can see from this map, there was already a Bridgeport over in the western part of the township, and so it was easier to simply take the name of the Gahanna farms of John Clark and put them in play to become the name of the new town. The new town was quite small, had less than 200 people living in it, and many folks thought that perhaps it might just be bypassed by people who were passing through looking for larger cities and villages. That isn't really true. There were enough people living here that a hotel could be established and actually make some money along the way. As well, there were a large number of village stores and other establishments. The town was active and growing, and larger numbers of people were coming to it over the years. The railroad added to the number of people living in the area, as well as the diversity in trade and commerce that the railroad brought with it. This map from 1895 shows that not only are there a large number of small farms, other agricultural establishments, but towns are coming into being as well. In the northern part of the township, Gahanna to the left, Havens Corner to the right. A little farther south, one would find Taylor Station and Blacklick. There are enough people living in and around Gahanna by 1895 that the Peace Lutheran Church decides that it needs a bigger church. So this large Gothic structure was built in the middle of downtown Gahanna. It would serve the congregation for many years. The interurban transportation system complemented the railroad and brought even more people to this part of the world in the years immediately after the turn of the century. Gahanna was growing. In this picture from the turn of the 20th century, it can be seen that a larger number of people are looking with favor on living in the village of Gahanna. Through World War I, the Great Depression, and even beyond that, through World War II, one would find larger and larger numbers of people living in the smaller towns surrounding the major population center of Columbus, sitting in the middle of Franklin County. All of this was about to change, however, in the years immediately after World War II, with the development of the interstate highway system, built originally for purposes of national defense. One would find that it now became quite easy to make a 30-minute journey to work in downtown Columbus while being able to live in suburban communities immediately adjacent to the Interstate 270 outer belt surrounding the capital city. Gahanna was one of the small towns that benefited from the establishment of the interstate highway system. In the years immediately after World War II, large numbers of subdivisions would be built in the area around Gahanna, and the population would increase significantly in the wake of the war. This was a time in the 1950s and early 1960s when people felt quite confident about their economic, political, and social futures. They were happy to live in a new suburban community. As we can see from the annual Gahanna flea market, large numbers of people were coming to major events in the town from time to time. Gahanna was a town on the verge of great growth. The Peace Lutheran Church decided by 1964 that it needed a new church as well, and so this structure was built and continues to serve the needs of the congregation to this day. But this left the old church empty, and for a time there was some thought as to whether this might indeed become a threatened landmark. Such was not to be the case. A large number of people came together to save the church, and eventually a number of organizations, most notably the Gahanna Foundation, came together to make the church into a new venue that would continue to serve the community. Work was done to restore the church, which had seen some wear and tear over the years, and the church was brought back to be a new event center. The Van Gericht and art glass windows throughout the church were restored as part of this restoration effort. The church now acts as an event center called the Sanctuary, not only for weddings but for the widest variety of community events as well. And there are plans to expand the facility, making a garden area immediately south of the church itself. From these architectural renderings, one can see what the new, fully restored sanctuary center will look like. What we have here is a national landmark which now serves the community as well.